Writing music becomes difficult when there are too many options to let creativity freely flow. With infinite options and many rules of theory, more time will be spent troubleshooting than creating, which can cause confusion and inhibit creative flow and motivation. What I'm going to demonstrate is pretty much a template to get good sounding results quickly so less time is spent troubleshooting, allowing ideas to flow. So we're going to start in key signature A minor. So there are no accidentals, which are sharp and flat notes. And once you're done, you can transpose the key later after the bass, chords, and melody are written if you choose. So the scale degrees of A minor, let's open up a MIDI clip. So the scale degrees of A minor, starting on A, are A. Makes it a little softer. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then there's A again. And each one of these notes has its own scale degree, starting on the first note, which we're going to call the first scale degree. So A is 1, B is 2, or second scale degree, C is 3, D is 4, E is 5, F is 6, and G is 7, and then A is the same as this octave, and that would be called the first scale degree as well, because it's the same note. All right, so we have these scale degrees, and the first thing that we want to do when we're creating a song, chord progression, melody, is to create a bassline progression. So an easy method to create a bassline progression is choose between 2 to 4 different notes of these scale degrees. So any note between A and G. But we're going to omit the second scale degree because 2 doesn't function well harmonically. And I'm not going to explain that, but it'll just make the writing process a lot easier and less awkward sounding progressions. So we have 6 notes to choose from. Before we start, I noticed that progressions sound best when starting on the 1, the 3, the 4, or the 6, and end on the 3, 6, or 7. And another thing is try not to use 2 of the same notes unless you're choosing 3 notes, and then repeat the last note to make 4 notes total. So for example, 1, 4, and 6. And so I'm just going to delete the 3, the 5, and the 7. So there are 3 notes here, and you can sequence the notes in 1 bar or 2 bar lengths per note. So basically, right now we just have 2 bars in this MIDI clip. So I'm going to bring this out to 4, and I'm going to designate each note to a bar. So you can see, if I zoom out, there we go. Now we have 4. Each one of these is a bar. So I have the 1, which is A, the second note, which is the 4, which is D, and then the third note, which is the 6th, which is F. And then for this last bar, I'm just going to repeat the last one. So I'm playing this all together. Nice. And I'm going to transpose this down a couple octaves so it's actually a bass. And turn these up a little bit. Great, so we created a bass line, and now we want to create chords from that bass line. So each bass note that we have here is going to be the root, or the first degree of the chord. We have the first degree of the key signature, which is A, which always remains A. But relatively speaking, we have degrees of the chord, and that's relative to these bass notes that we have. So what we're going to do is build triads from each root. Triads are 3-note chords that are built in thirds, skipping 1 note in between, spelled as 1, 3, 5, with the lowest note first. So, for example, our A, D, F, F progression can be built into chords by creating triads from these. Building chords, though, I'm going to just transpose these up a couple octaves because chords sound better in higher registers than bass register. So I transpose these up 2 octaves, same notes, just 2 octaves higher. And to build triads, what we're going to do is we have the 1, we have the first scale degree of the chord that we're going to be making. And so we're going to go up 2 scale degrees to create the third. So in A minor, also note that A minor is all of the white keys. I'm going to go up 2 notes. So we have A, we just made the third, which is C, and then we're going to make the fifth, which is going to be E. The reason that we're not using B or D is because neither of these are the thirds or fifths. 1, 3, 5 is how you build a triad. 1, 3, 5. So all together. And we're going to do the same thing for the next note. So we're starting on D, and we're going to go up 2 notes to F, D, E, F, and then 2 more notes, F, G, A. And then for the Fs, same thing. Go up 2, F, G, A, which is the third, and then the fifth is A, B, C, the fifth. So as you can see, by restricting notes to the key signature, you don't have to worry about which chords should be major or minor. If you want to change a chord, like let's say I want this chord to be an E chord instead of an F chord, if I transpose this down, now this G sharp, we're breaking the key signature because G sharp is not in A minor because A minor is all of the natural keys, all of the white keys. So it may or may not sound okay to your ears, but it's best to stay in what is theoretically correct so you can entrain your ears to what is theoretically correct and then break the rules once your ear is trained. If I wanted this to be an E, I would have to rebuild this chord. So E, G, natural, B. So this would make a lot more sense, theoretically. Oh, and you would also have to change your bass line as well. Melodies sound pleasing when there is stepwise motion and when there is some kind of motif or rhythmic motif. So stepwise motion basically just means a sequence of notes that move up or down adjacent to each other. An example would be 1, 2, 3, or going down 1, 7, 6, that sort of thing. And when there's a rhythmic motif, which is some kind of pattern that repeats every 1 bar, 2 bars, or sometimes 4 or 8 bars. What we're going to do when creating a melody is we're going to restrict our note choices to the scale degrees 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7 of the key signature. So in A minor, these notes are going to be A, B, C, D, E, and G. We're omitting the 6th scale degree, which is F, because it doesn't often function well harmonically. It doesn't guarantee that it's actually going to sound good over these chords. I'm going to create a new track and delete these, and let's just start throwing notes down. See what happens. So I'm going to start off with D. So D, that's the 4. It's the 4th scale degree of A. I'm going to pick a note that is either above or below it, so it resolves to one of the notes that are in this chord. It's going to resolve to either the 3 or the 5, so let's do D, E. I'm going to change this patch. So I'm going to do a stepwise motion. I'm going to go from D to E to F, just going up one note at a time. And all the way up to G. Let's see how that sounds. I'm also going to bring the release down of this. And it's best when creating a melody to listen to it in context with your chords. So let's go all the way up back to A. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And let's just jump around. So let's try B. So a lot of stepwise motion going on in here. And this big jump from A to this octave lower B. Cool, let's try another melody. Let's start on, so we don't want to start on F because it just doesn't really harmonize that well with every chord. So yes, as you can see, a lot of stepwise motion going on within these kind of sub-phrases. Great, so to actually put this into context, we're going to make this twice as long, just duplicating this out, and then let's keep the placement of these notes in time. So we have a rhythmic motif, something that repeats rhythmically, but we can change some of these notes up a little bit. Often, changing the notes near the end can establish change, while keeping the notes the same in the first half of the melody establishes consistency. So I'm just randomly moving these around, making sure not to land on F, and let's hear how this sounds in context. Not bad. Bring this down. I can make this C again. Or make this D, so we have some stepwise motion. I think I like the sound of this better. It just flows more. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is a little bit more advanced techniques. I want to talk about chord extensions and chord inversions. So chord extensions, You can make chords sound more dense and emotional by including extensions to the triads. Extensions are additional notes above the triad, which follow the same note skipping order. For example, a chord built as 1, 3, 5. If we can add a 7 on top of that, and 1, 3, 5, 7 chord would also be known as a 7th chord. And in A minor, which we're in, it would be spelled like A, C, E, G. And I'll show you. So we have A, C, and E. And if we add a G, so we're skipping over F. So 1, 3, 5, 7. I'm going to mute our lead line melody. You can hear it gives like a more emotional depth and density to this chord. So extensions go up to 13 in the order 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. And you may be thinking 9, 11, and 13, they're not within the 7 notes of the scale. How could this be if there's only 7 notes? Well, the 9, 11, and 13 are representing octaves of the 2, 4, and the 6th. So in A minor, a fully extended chord would be spelled A, C, E, G, B, D, and F. So we have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. But be careful, because the more extensions that you add can make a chord and a chord progression in its entirety sound less stable. So I'm going to mute these top ones. I'm gonna just stick with the 9th here, and let's make a 7th on this one, and a 7th, and let's do a 9th on this one too. So sometimes extensions don't sound appropriate, and in this case, if we play this all together, you're going to notice that this last chord, the 9th on this last chord, may sound out of place. And take note of what note this is. This is an F. And as we said before, in melodies, the 6th scale degree doesn't always function harmonically well. And this is the same reason that we also don't use the 2 chord, because there's an F in the 2. If we start from B and make a triad, that would be spelled B, D, F. And that F is it's dissonant. It doesn't sound that good. So what we can do is we can omit the 9. Let's try adding an 11th. 9, 10, 11. And then muting this 9th. It sounds a lot more harmonious. And so the next thing I want to talk about are chord inversions. So chord inversions are simply octave transpositions of the top or bottom notes of a chord. And the nomenclature is as follows. First inversion is taking the bottom note, or the root of a chord, and transposing it an octave higher. Second inversion takes the bottom 2 notes, which are the 1 and the 3, and transpose them an octave higher. Third inversion transposes the bottom 3 notes up an octave, etc. So we can invert chords by just transposing the bottom notes a couple octaves higher. So now, this chord, its root is still A, but the bottom note is C. It's the 3rd. This bottom note is not called the root of the chord anymore, because A is the root. It's called the bottom note of an inverted chord, or the bottom note of any chord really, is called the bass note of the chord. So the bass note of the chord is C, even though the root is A, and it sounds like this. It almost sounds major. It almost sounds like C major. Without context of a bass line, where the root notes are present, it's hard to determine what chord it actually is supposed to be. The bass line puts context to the chord. We can even take this A out. So there's no A in this chord at all. But with an A in the bass line, it still sounds like A. It still functions as A, as an A chord. So we can also invert, we can keep inverting this if we want to. Let's invert these. And I'm gonna drop this one down an octave, and I'm also gonna drop this top one down an octave. So what I'm doing here is what is called voice leading. And voice leading essentially is when the voices of the chords, or the notes of the chords, are in a very similar pitch range as its surrounding chords. And this creates a more flowy progression. The chords sound like they're more related to each other just because there are more notes in common. As you can see, C spans consistently across 3 of these chords. The same note spans across these chords, but they're different chords. So let's hear how this sounds. You could also just select a bunch of the top notes or the bottom notes of all the chords and experiment with transposing octaves, like so. They're the same chords with the same chord qualities because none of the notes of the chords are different. We just removed some notes and transposed their octave. But it's the same notes and the same chords. And hearing them with the bass line, they still function the same way harmonically. So I'm going to copy this over. Let's hear how the melody sounds in context. So at this point, now that I have a melody and a chord progression and a bass line that I like, I can decide whether or not I want to transpose it to a different key. And by doing this, it's as simple as just moving all of the notes all of the notes of all of the instruments the same amount. So I'm going to combine these MIDI clips, and let's say I want this, instead of A minor, I want this to be in F sharp minor. So the distance between A and F sharp is 1, 2, 3 semitones. So I'm just going to select all and then move all of these notes down 3 semitones. And I'm going to do the same thing with the melody. And it's still going to sound great when I play it because we're preserving the harmonic relationship. Everything is just being moved, shifted the same amount. Also in this melody, I'm just going to transpose some of these notes an octave higher. I think this might sound good. Build a little bit more tension because it's a little bit more exciting because they're higher frequency notes near the end of the progression. So. Great, so now I'm gonna make an entirely new one. Let's create a new chord progression. First, starting out with a different bass line. And we're gonna be in, let's stick it to A minor as well, for simplicity's sake. And so let's choose some chords. So instead of it, let's not start on A, which is the first scale degree. Let's do 4, 3, 6, 7. Let's not even play an A. Even though we're in A minor, let's just not even play the 1. So 3 of the A would be 1, 2, 3. That would be C. What did I say? 3, 4, or 4, 3, 6, 7. So okay, 4, 4, 3, which is right below 4. So 4, 5, 6, which is F. 7, which is G. So I know before that I said the 6th, be careful with the 6th, but when it comes to the root of a chord, that really doesn't apply. And when I build these chords, you'll hear that it still sounds really good. When it comes to the upper scale degrees of when we're building chords out, it applies. And when we're creating a melody, it still applies. But when we're actually creating the bass line or the root notes for the chords, the 6th can definitely be in there, and it functions very well harmonically. So I'm just going to expand these out to 4 bars. So we have all right, so let's start building triads. Let's bring these down. And then, so that's our bass line. Transpose 2 octaves up, and let's start building our chords. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First triad. 1, 3, 4, 5. Quantize these. And let's add some extensions. So 7, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 7, 9. Let's try 11. And so this technically works theoretically, but it's going to still sound kind of awkward having this F, or this 6th scale degree of our key signature. You may notice that there is an F in this D chord, but because it's not an extension, it's a third, it's usually passable and usually sounds appropriate. So I'm going to invert this, and this F, let's just bring this down. Let's see actually hear how this sounds. Some people may like the sound of this. I'm not too big of a fan of this kind of sound, so I'm just gonna remove this. And let's try the 13th. So the 13th is also the 6th scale degree. And a quick way to get to the 13th is just to copy your 5th up 1, so it's a 6th. Let's see how this sounds. quite like the sound of that. I'm also gonna transpose these up so we get a little bit more voice leading going on. This chord is a little too dense. You could experiment with omitting some notes to decrease the density. I'm also going to bring all these notes down an octave. I think this top note is bothering me, so I'm going to re-enable this bottom note. That sounds a little bit more pleasing, and I believe because we have better voice leading going on. We have an E, the same E, playing 3 chords in a row. And let's break this out into different instruments. You can do some cool rhythmic stuff with the chord. I'm going to duplicate this out one more time. We have the same instrument here. What I'm going to do is erase the bass line in this instrument, and then erase the chords in this instrument. So now we have our bass line and chords on separate tracks. I'm also going to change the sound of this bass. And we can also transpose the notes of our bass line by octaves as well. I'm going to bring that one down. Maybe this one too. So now let's change the rhythm up of these. I'm going to select all these chords, I'm going to shorten them. And I'm going to select all of these, and then I'm going to offset these. I'm going to copy these over and offset them all at the same rhythm. So every bar is going to have the same chord rhythm on different chords. So let's do dotted quarter notes, which is a quarter note and a half. So quarter note and then eighth note, and then the next chord plays. Let's do the same thing with our bass line, except let's do something a little bit different. Let's just do half notes and extend these out. And let's use our piano track for the lead melody. So let's start on A, why not? Let's just pick random note. So if I do F here, May sound a little awkward. Yeah, it sounds a little awkward. We can make this G. Sounds a lot more harmonic. We can do some stepwise motion. I'm going to bring these over here. So this is stepwise downwards. And then when it loops back around, it's going to glide right back into our A. Great, let's copy this out and let's vary this second half of the melody. And let's make this stepwise but upwards. And I'm going to skip over this F and go down to E. Actually, if I want this to loop back to A, I'm going to have to bring these down. Not touching that F. Nice. So let's hear the whole melody. I'm also going to combine these clips and make everything legato. I'm going to actually change this B to a G because of consistency. It's more motific this way because of the consistency in the first half of the phrase. And let's transpose this entire thing. Let's transpose it up. Let's transpose it to B minor now. So B minor is only 2 semitones away from A, moving up. So I'm going to do that for everything. Let's hear how it sounds. Still sounds great. And let's just polish this off. Let's add some reverb and delay on these chords. Just make it sound a little prettier, a little less dry. And let's add octaves to this melody. Turn this down a little bit and bring that up to the octave, and then let's offset them slightly so it has a little bit of like a pluck effect. And let's hear it all together. We can also add more rhythmic variation in the bass line. I'm going to take every fourth note and double it. I'm also just going to make this patch a little bit more plucky.